One archive file, 5 minutes and 3 masks later in Lightroom, and there's a big change. So I shot this at Château de Chambord in the Loire Valley back in 2013 on a Canon 5D Mark III with the 24-105 f4 lens. It sat unnoticed on a hard drive because it felt just a little flat. But with today's masking tools and a careful top to bottom workflow, we can find the image hiding in the file that inspired me all those years ago. Now today I'll keep the edit subtle. I'm going to lift the overall exposure, target the sky and the chateau with masks, add a touch of warmth, and then finally remove any distractions. So let's open Lightroom and get to work.
When you take pictures with your camera, in this case it was a Canon 5D Mark III, you're most likely aware that you can save your images either as a JPEG or a RAW file. Now I know this is Photography 101, but just in case you're just getting started in the wonderful world of, I don't know, what should we call it, collecting camera equipment in my case? Well, a JPEG compresses the image down to 8 bits per color channel. That's 256 brightness levels each for red, green and blue, or about 16.7 million possible colors. The camera also bakes in settings like white balance, contrast and saturation, so what you see is a finished file with limited room for editing. Now a RAW file, on the other hand, records up to 14 bits per channel, giving you around about 16,300 odd brightness levels per channel. In other words, vastly more tonal detail. Think of it as a digital negative. None of the camera's processing is permanent, so you can adjust exposure, recover highlights, lift shadows, and fine-tune the white balance with much more flexibility than you can, say, with a JPEG file. The trade-off is, of course, size. RAW files from the 5D Mark III are usually around about 25 to 30 megabytes compared to, say, 3 to 8 megabytes for JPEGs. And of course, as I've used cameras such as the 5DSR and now moved to the R5 Mark II, the files get considerably bigger. And of course, the JPEG file size depends on what the subject is. What that extra data gives you in the RAW file is far greater levels of control in post-processing. So if we look at this image from 2013 of the Château de Chambord, it looks a little flat and dull. It hasn't yet been processed to bring it back to life. So let's get started. Going over to the Develop tab, and the first thing I want to do, working top to bottom, I'm, as usual, going to avoid the white balance until the very end, because any decisions I make in terms of contrast and saturation may affect my color perception. So we start with the exposure, and it's a little dark, so I'm going to bring it up a bit, just brighten the image up. I'm going to increase the contrast. I'm going to drop back the highlights, and I'm going to bring up the shadows. So I'm just doing this by eye. And I want to bring up my whites and drop back my black. That's pretty good. And I'm after some mid-tone contrast in the image, which I'm going to apply about 15 points on the clarity slider to give me that mid-tone crun. Let's just have a quick look before I touch vibrance and saturation. Quick look. Yeah, you see it's starting to come to life now. Vibrance targets the undersaturated colors, and I'll give that about 20 points, and about 5 or so on the saturation. Coming down now, there is really no inherent noise in this image. It was shot at ISO 100. Let me rephrase that actually. Of course, there's noise in every image that you shoot, but it's not noticeable because it was shot at ISO 100. Now, I'm going to come down to sharpening, and I will add some sharpening to the image. I don't want to add it to the sky, of course, so holding down the Option key, let's move the masking slider across. Anything that's white is where it'll be sharpened. Anything that is black is where it will not be sharpened. So that's about right. We've just masked that, and I can sharpen to around about 80 points. And that's a decent enough sharpening for this level of the process. Lens corrections, I always enable chromatic aberration, and I also enable profile corrections. And this enables Adobe to work out that, yes, I was using the 24-105 EF f4 lens, and it mitigates against any distortion in the lens and vignetting that may be inherent in that lens design. That's pretty much where I'm at as far as this image, but you may notice It's almost imperceptible. What you may notice, the building is leaning away from me slightly. So let's just use an auto correction to just correct it. And now the image, the chateau appears to be standing up correctly. Incidentally, this is the back of the chateau. It's probably the most recognized view of it, but this is actually the back, not the front. So we've done our global adjustments. Now what we want to do is just finish the image with some masking. And I obviously want to bring back a little more drama into the sky. So let's come back up to the top, click the masking tab, select the sky, and let's drop that exposure back in the sky, bring up some contrast, push the highlights up a little, shadows down, so the opposite of what we were doing before. Bring the whites up, drop the blacks back. And yeah, that's giving me a pretty good dramatic sky. Let's have a quick look at the before and after. Yeah, I'm liking that. One thing I might do, this is one of those days in the Loire Valley where it was shiny one minute and raining the next. So I am going to add a little bit of blue to this mask so that I can just give it a little bit more of a summery feel. So let's just push some blue into the mask very slightly, around about 5-6 points there. Let's just see. Yeah, I'm liking that. It just makes it feel a little bit more summery, in my opinion. I'm going to create a new mask, select the subject, which is, of course, the chateau. Now, notice that when I do this, it has selected the chateau, but it's also selected some of the sky behind, and this could be fiddly to try and fix. So what we'll do is we'll try and use the mask to fix itself, in other words, the subject. So let's subtract from this mask the sky and see what happens. And that cleans up the mask pretty well. I'm happy with that. Now all I need to do is increase my exposure slightly and bring up my shadows a little bit more, I feel. That's looking better. Drop back the blacks a little, bring up the whites a little. And as I did with the sky, I'm going to add a little bit of warmth into this to simulate sunlight, really, simulate a sort of a summer's day. That's probably about right. It may not be that easy to see on the YouTube video, but yes, it just warms it up a little bit, gives it a little bit of that sort of glow from a summer's feel. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I think we can pretty much leave it there. The last thing I could do is remove these people, which I think we probably will do. Actually, before I do that, let me just bring up the exposure a little bit more on the chateau. Yeah, that's more to my taste. Okay, so let's come down and let's remove these people. So I'm going to select the eraser tool, and I don't want you, go away. And we're going to select the people here, and the distraction removal tab, come down. It's going to detect the people. Okay, now that it's selected the people we can see from the overlay there, I'm just going to say, click remove. And I won't make you watch this. So that's it, done. If I click the eye icon, you can see that it has removed people not only in front of the chateau, but just to the side as well. So let's go back to the main processing tab and just see how far we've taken this image. Pretty quickly, but yeah, that's not looking bad at all. Let's do a before and after. And you can see we fixed the lean, we've brought some drama back into the image, and we have given it more of a summer's vibe. And when you are looking at the before and after, this is the time when you can say, okay, well, did I take that edit a little bit too far? In the instance of the cloud mask, I think I probably did. If you follow my cursor, you can see that I've blown the highlights both here and here. And these highlights do exist in the image if we look at the original. So let's just go back and fix that. That's not what I want to do. So we're going to take it back to this image, go back to the masks, look at the sky, and I'm just going to dial those highlights back a little bit in the sky area and just drop back some. See, if I take it back to that level, then it looks obviously frankly ridiculous. So we'll take it back down, drop the exposure back down. That's not looking too bad. And now I'm going to create a new mask with the brush, and I'm just going to paint on the area where I wish to rescue my highlights, which is just these areas here. And let's drop those highlights back, drop the exposure back, and you can see now I've brought back detail into those areas of the image in the sky. So if we're looking at that just before and after, there is now printable details in that area of the image. So, having done that, I might just overall increase my exposure, just very slightly. and drop my blacks back very slightly. I think that now is more in line with what I had in mind. Yeah. So there's my before and after. That I'm much happier with, but it just gives me a much more dramatic view of the back of the chateau on a summer's day.
So that's the finished image, an old RAW file given new life with just a few simple edits. Which brings me to my question, and please do let me know down in the comments below. How much do you edit your images? Is this more than you would usually do, or just the bare minimum? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts and about your workflow. So again, please do let me know in the comments down below. Now here's some quick travel tips for you if you're thinking of visiting the chateau or the region. And tip number 1, explore the grounds by bike. Hire a bike or walk the estate paths. Chambord's park is absolutely huge, and the best little photo spots aren't always right by the chateau. Cycling lets you find quieter vantage points and capture just different approaches to the building. Now tip number 2, how do you get there? Well, it's about 2 hours from Paris. You could take the train to Blois or Orléans and get a shuttle or a taxi from there. However, I strongly recommend renting a car. It gives you the flexibility to visit other chateaux such as Château de Chambord, which was Hergé's inspiration for Tintin, or more specifically the Tintin character Captain Haddock, and it was his home Marlinspike Hall the inspiration was taken from Chambord. Now there's also the beautiful Château de Chambord, also known as the Château of the Ladies, or you could visit the fabulous Chaumont-sur-Loire. Now tip number 3, whilst you're at Chambord, don't miss the Leonardo da Vinci designed double helix staircase. It's fascinating in and of itself, but it also leads to the rooftop terraces, which offer unique angles and some great photo opportunities. Now what do you eat in the Loire region? Well, first and foremost, you have to try the Loire Valley goat's cheeses, the most famous being the Château de Chambord. Now pair that with a local wine such as a Sancerre or a Chinon, and of course also try the freshly baked regional tarts such as the wonderful tarte tatin. Now tip number 5, if you're planning on visiting more of the other famous chateaux in the regions, I recommend basing yourself in Amboise and making day trips from there, as it is centrally located to a lot of the sites in the region. Now while in Amboise, do visit Château du Clos Lucé, which was the residence of Leonardo da Vinci. Thank you for watching. I hope this edit helps you see the potential in an old file and inspire you to visit the chateau. Again, apologies for my pronunciations, but if you got some value out of this, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel, and consider subscribing for more image edits and some basic travel tips. Until the next time, safe travels and keep shooting.